Welcome to Capitol View, the weekly program where we talk about state politics and government and how it might just affect you. Joining me this week on Capitol View is Kent Redfield, Professor Emeritus of Political Science from the University of Illinois, Springfield. Welcome, Professor.
Good to be here.
And also Peter Hancock, reporter for Capitol News, Illinois. Welcome, Peter.
Good to see you, Bruce.
As we are taping this on Thursday, we are one day removed from what folks thought would be perhaps a linchpin moment for Congressman Rodney Davis as his compatriots in Washington, D.C. decided that Liz Cheney is not the leader they want. There had been a lot of speculation leading up on this as to which way would Mr. Davis vote. Folks had ignored the possibility they would do it with a voice vote. And so we really don't know now, and we probably never will know. Mr. Davis has not hinted at exactly which way he took. I like Donald Trump. I like Liz Cheney. They're both great folks. It's a big tent. Can't we all get along? Sort of. But he is this issue has been shed somewhat from him, at least for now. It may come up in the future. Hours after this vote was taken, Mr. Davis issued a release, his press release, saying that J.B. Pritzker is the worst governor ever. What a horrible person he is. We really got to do better. I don't know the particulars of it, but it was a typical, what you would expect as a broadside, more or less, from a campaign. There has been much speculation that Rodney Davis will run for governor at the next election. Do we know anything more now than we did previously, and how much might redistricting play into his decision? Kent?
Well, we don't know. No, we don't know a lot more. That it obviously allows him to talk about the issue from both sides, depending on the audience. And you certainly would, if you were thinking about running statewide and putting together some kind of coalition of moderates and independents along with your Republican base, you would have a slightly different tone than if you were running in a legislative district where you had been paired up with recently elected Representative Miller, who would be quite a bit to the right of Congressman Davis, and would she's second to none in terms of being a Trump supporter. So Davis will not know in what his district looks like until we get a congressional map, and we may or may not get a congressional map before we actually get the official census data in September. And since that's about the time you have to start filing petitions or circulating, nominating petitions and stuff, it isn't the kind of crunch that you have with the state legislative map, but there's a lot of uncertainty there. And you could, if the Democrats are of a mind, they could probably draw Miller and Davis and LaHood all in the same district. I don't know that there'd be any partisan advantage other than just giving them headaches. So,
and wouldn't it be fun to watch? But go ahead.
Yeah, but it's everybody's keeping their options open, and that's certainly what I view him as doing at this point, is making sure that he doesn't commit too strongly in one direction or another, depending on how what looks like the best way to continue his political career.
Yeah. If you're Pritzker, at this point in time, and a lot can change, but at this point in time, if you're Pritzker and you had your druthers, would you rather run against LaHood or Davis?
Oh, I think you'd like to run against a conservative downstate Republican.
You want Darren Bailey, yeah.
Yeah, or and I don't, that all of that would be preferable to running against someone who would appeal to Republican suburban voters in terms of a more general election kind of Republican candidate. So I don't think Pritzker's particularly, that Davis's potential candidacy probably doesn't bother him as much as, you know, either a billionaire-backed moderate or even Adam Kitzinger, the congressman from, you know, the district that wraps around the suburbs.
Yeah, because Kinzinger has so far alienated himself, I think, from the Trump bloc. It's questionable, probably, you know, how much of that support he could get. Davis is a different riddle in the sense that he has been a supporter of Trump in the past. He's brought, I think, the vice president, yes, Mike Pence, to Illinois to fundraise for him. He hasn't burned bridges, and so at least in the way that some other folks have. Darren Bailey, you're right, Professor. If I want to run against anybody, it's that guy statewide. Now. There's another issue facing the governor here that is almost has become a perennial, or is at least in the short term, and that's the LaSalle Veterans Home. The first lawsuits are coming in, and from what we're seeing so far, at least my observation is this is potentially worse. The facts of it are worse than what former Governor Rauner faced at the Quincy Veterans Home. How much can this stick to the governor politically? I mean, is there any way out for him? Because this stuff they knew well in advance, unlike with Legionnaire's disease, that kind of dropped in some sense. It had been heard of before, but there wasn't the whole country suffering from Legionnaire's disease, and Governor Rauner's administration scrambled to deal with it, and they were horrible at dealing with the press and getting their message across and coming across as arrogant, and both to the public reporters and to the legislature. This one has some real stuff in it in the sense of very common sense measures weren't taken and people died. Does the governor going to have a chance to recover from this? Is it going to hurt him that badly?
I don't think so, Bruce. You know, everybody wants to compare this to the incident with the Quincy Veterans Home a few years ago. And, you know, looking at it as an outsider that I was, the issue with the Quincy home was kind of symbolic. I mean, that fiasco just sort of represented a governor who was asleep at the wheel and was not tending to the business of the state. I don't think you can make that same argument about the LaSalle home, although I do agree it's serious. We knew there was a pandemic. We knew how it was being spread. They didn't take the steps that were needed. But I don't know that you can lay all of that on the governor's desk. You know, they got rid of the person who was in charge of that home. There's now new leadership at the Department of Veterans Affairs. You know, I think the governor has done pretty much everything that he can do. You got Republicans calling for some sort of criminal investigation, and maybe there was some criminal negligence going on. But I question how much of that you can lay directly at the feet of the governor's office.
Well, if I was running the ad, here's what I would do. I'd have the family member of dead veteran there saying, Grandpa died because Governor Pritzker decided he was going to appoint a political crony to run the home where everything broke down. The governor puts politics ahead of lives. That's how I'd run it. And I'm not sure that that's entirely inaccurate, putting a former legislator in charge of Veterans Affairs.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a legitimate criticism. But, you know, I mean, when it comes to election time, there are going to be a lot of issues. The dynamics of a statewide race like that cut 1,000 different ways. I just, you know, sitting here now, a year and a half out from it, I'm not entirely sure how strongly this is going to play.
Fair enough. Let's talk about some good news. The state is awash in money. That's what we're getting from, you're smiling, Mr. Redfield. That's the message we're getting from, help me out on this, I always get it, the Commission on Forecasting Government, the money folks, COFGA, has just come out with a new report saying, we think we're going to get $2 billion more than we thought we were going to get just in March, just a few months ago. Is this going to, what effect might this have? How much easier does it make the job of Pritzker and legislators? And also, Mendoza is crowing, our comptroller, we're out of debt. Our past due bills are all paid up. We're current. She's going to, the bond rating agencies saying, we deserve to be a tick or so above junk status. We're now fiscally responsible. How much easier, if at all, is this going to make the job of the legislature and the governor during these waning days of the session when they do have to pass a budget?
Well, it will give you some wiggle room in terms of pretending that you've got all of your bases covered without kicking your debt over into the next fiscal year. And that's dangerous more than anything else. I mean, we're not, we're paying bills, down to what would be the more normal cycle, assuming that, that also includes a lot of borrowed federal money that we're now trying to pay back. It assumes revenue assumptions that, if we could have runaway inflation, which would be bad for the economy, but good for sales tax collections. There's a ton of uncertainty. The governor has just promised $350 million to fund the school aid formula, which he was saying he was going to withhold to try and leverage some revenue somewhere else. This is their projection about, maybe you can count on $700 million of, revenue that you could really put into the base. And that's one of the problems, is kind of figuring out what is continuing growth and what are one-time sorts of things. So it allows you to engage in some happy talk. It allows you to fund some things that you might not have, prudently been able to do. But it also decreases your leverage to go out and get the loopholes, the corporate loopholes the governor wants, which would be things that would be built into the base. If you stop giving certain kinds of tax credits, then you're eliminating tax expenditures, you're building things into the permanent base. And so from a budgeting standpoint, the Republicans would like the state to look as insolvent as possible going into the 2024 election, and the Democrats would prefer that we kind of, fudge through so that we can balance things on paper and not have the real serious budget discussion take place until we're into Governor Pritzker's second term. So there's an awful lot of, shadow boxing in terms of this without really coming clean in terms of, what we can afford, how solid are our revenue sources, and, what are the hard choices. And if you can avoid the hard choices, that's and kick it down the road, that's the best traditions of financing Illinois government. So I'm not sure how this will play out when we actually get to a real budget, for the coming fiscal year. But it's not terrible news, but we don't know how much of it is real or permanent.
One thing that strikes me, wasn't his first budget cycle, there was $5 billion in found money. And now this isn't in the same sense, but there's $2 billion more than we thought we'd have. Does Christmas just come in spring for this governor, or is he just lucky? It's all.
No, go ahead, Peter.
Well, I was going to say that the other sort of elephant in the room is the way we got through this fiscal year was by borrowing about $3.2 billion from the Federal Reserve. That money has to be paid back in a fairly short span of time. The original plan was that it would take Illinois is supposed to get $7.5 to $8 billion from the American Rescue Plan in the relief that they're giving out to state and local governments. But we're now hearing the Treasury Department is not going to let states use that to pay down debt, including our Treasury debt. So, yeah, it's good that we have revenue is coming in faster than expected, but we've still got some pretty huge bills sitting out there. So I wouldn't exactly call it a Christmas gift. You know, it's state still has some very serious fiscal pressures on it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I've seen worse lumps of coal, however. Let's talk for a little bit about unemployment here. NPR ran a pretty good story this week, came out today, about Pritzker not eager to end $300 extras per week in unemployment benefits for folks who are collecting unemployment, even as governors in other states are saying, no, it's time to end these extra unemployment benefits. Also, we've got the state's eviction moratorium continues, even though a federal judge has struck down a moratorium on evictions at the federal level. Unemployment, how is this playing? I mean, you've got the business community saying, lift them. We can't find enough folks to apply for jobs. Unemployment's low, considering, and so it's time to end them. Is this the governor's marker in any way, sense, or shape, or form about here's how I deal with the pandemic and those who have been thrown out of work or the less fortunate?
You know, I think one of the lessons we're going to learn from this is, you know, everybody is anxious for the economy to get back to normal. And I think one of the things we've learned through this is that normal really wasn't working out that well for a lot of people. And there are too many jobs out there that pay low wages, that don't pay enough to afford childcare. And, you know, I think the labor market and the employment market overall is going to have to make some adjustments coming out of this because, you know, like I said, normal wasn't working out very well for a lot of people.
And, you know, this plays into the broad political narratives. You know, if you're a Republican governor and you've got a constituency that, you know, believes that, you know, we've got a lot of lazy people out there who are more than happy to collect those unemployment checks and rather than work and are just having a nice a vacation and eventually they'll get back into the labor force. You know, that plays into a narrative about that you're tough fiscal conservative, you're about fostering initiative, you're Democratic governor, then you're talking about, you know, the single mom who's sitting at home and she doesn't have any child care. And if she loses those unemployment benefits, then, you know, she's probably still can't afford, you know, if she goes back to work, she can't afford the child care. And so we're pushing, the children into child poverty. And so, and so we have these competing myths about, what's the nature of the workforce and how much we have to incentivize people to work. And there's no data on this. We're back to Ronald Reagan's welfare queen in terms of talking about, what does that labor market actually look like? And I think Peter makes, an excellent point that it became clear when, that we don't have the kind of child support, we don't network in terms of daycare, in terms of the kinds of things that can keep people in the labor market, particularly two-person families. Is that woman, and it's usually a woman, staying at home with the kids because they can't get childcare, but it's the husband that has the job, and so how do we get her back into the labor market? Do we cut off her, extra unemployment benefits, or do we figure out a way to provide more child care support? So there's some pretty broad narratives that are here, and there's real data, and it's a serious policy question, but it's also about the political myths and the narratives that the parties are presenting to their supporters. So the fact that Republican governors are going one way and Democratic governors are going another, I think is indicative of how this plays out at kind of an ideological level.
No, how again? All of these are excellent points. How does it play in the suburbs? I'm not sure. I mean, it's refreshing, if nothing else, on some level, to see somebody who was walking their talk, and hopefully that he is walking his talk in terms of putting forth these programs or extending these programs when there seems to be some sentiment out there that it might not be the politically expedient thing to do, and other governors are taking a different course of action. I want to talk for a second about my record collection. Folks may have noticed that I have a few albums, and you can't see it, but the wall opposite me is also full of record albums. I can guarantee you there is not a single album by REO Speedwagon amongst them. This week, Governor Pritzker, well, not Governor Pritzker, I'm sorry, the state of Illinois has announced a new song to stimulate folks to go out and see the state after being cooped up from pandemic. It's Time to Drive, which is a takeoff from the REO Speedwagon song, Time to Fly. Let me read the lyrics, if I could, for just a second from this song that we have borrowed to promote tourism. I've been around for you, been up and down for you, but I just can't get any relief. I've swallowed my pride for you, lived and lied for you, but you still make me feel like a thief. Is that the sort of imagery we want to evoke when we see folks driving around Illinois to see such great sights? And we do have many in the state of Illinois, Galena and so forth, because that's what I think of having been around in 1979. And it struck me perhaps there might be better alternatives. We have a lot of musical groups from this state going way back. We have Earth, Wind, and Fire. We have Buddy Guy. We have Miles Davis. We have Cheap Trick. We even have Styx. And we picked REO Speedwagon. Am I the only person here who thinks that maybe we might have been able to have done a little bit better? Go ahead. Anyway.
Yes, I think you are the only person who thinks that. I was at that press conference, and I got to tell you, it made me want to get out and drive around the state. It's been a long time. Been stuck here in Springfield for a long time. My father was originally from Southern Illinois and used to take us down to Shawnee National Forest and the old Stone Face and Garden of the Gods, places like that. And I really miss it. And that commercial, it made me want to get back on the road and go see some stuff in Illinois.
Oh, that's so nice. Misty watercolored memories. How beautiful. What do you think, Professor?
I'm not sure that I'm not sure it's a campaign designed to appeal to millennials. I actually, do remember REO Speedwagon and probably have some of those songs on my iPhone in my, boomers playlist. But it is, Illinois does not do a good job of trying to promote the state, and but that's part of the problem. Is Illinois is a whole bunch of different states, and so you can promote Lincoln and Springfield and Chicago and downstate Illinois, and I don't know whether the best approach to tourism is something that is very focused on specific areas, or whether you can really run a statewide campaign that will have everybody humming along with the joys of Illinois. So I'm not sure it's an easy task.
Well, they could satisfy the needs of 3 white boomers in glasses, male boomers in glasses, if they went with sticks. Welcome to the grand illusion. Come on out and see what's happening. Pay your price. Get your tickets to the show. It does the same sort of thing, doesn't it? And we could have imagery of Cubs games. We could have all sorts of things, and we could go on and on for forever. But unfortunately, we are out of time. And so, thanks for joining us this week on Capitol View. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next week.